I thought my wife loved me. We were married for 10 years, I worked day and night to provide for us. And then I accidentally received a notification about a suite reservation at a hotel, in her name. At that moment, I realized that she wasn't just cheating, she was planning an escape with another man, leaving me with nothing. I never considered myself wealthy, but I did everything in my power to ensure Laura had the best life possible. We met during my final year of college. She was a barista at the coffee shop near campus where I spent countless hours studying for my engineering degree. Her smile lit up the small, dimly lit space, and I found myself ordering more coffees than I needed just to talk to her. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at Riverside Engineering in Boston. The pay wasn't great, but it had potential. When I proposed to Laura 6 months later, I promised her I'd give her the world. She said she didn't need the world, she just needed me. We married in a small ceremony at her parents' lake house in New Hampshire. It wasn't fancy, but it was perfect. We rented a modest apartment in Somerville and started building our life together. I took on additional projects at work, volunteered for overtime, and even consulted on the side. Laura worked part-time at a local boutique, but she talked about wanting to start her own business someday. "Just wait, Jack," she'd say, her eyes sparkling with ambition. "One day, we'll have everything we dreamed of." I believed her. I believed in us. 5 years into our marriage, I had saved enough for a down payment on a small house in Medford. The mortgage payments stretched our budget thin, but Laura fell in love with the backyard garden and the bay window in the living room. I took on more work to make it happen. "This is just the beginning," I told her as we stood in our empty living room after closing. "I promise, things will only get better from here." She wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "You've already given me so much, Jack. I'm the luckiest woman alive." For the next 5 years, I continued climbing the corporate ladder. I was promoted twice, each time taking on more responsibility and longer hours. Laura decorated our home beautifully and hosted dinner parties for my colleagues and bosses. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple. I thought so too. I invested a portion of each paycheck, built our retirement accounts, and set aside money for the children we planned to have someday. We didn't live extravagantly, but we were comfortable. Or at least, I thought we were. We celebrated our 10th anniversary with a weekend trip to Cape Cod. It wasn't the European vacation Laura had hinted at wanting, but it was what we could afford after I'd put a significant amount into our investment portfolio that month. "Next year," I promised as we walked along the beach. "Next year, maybe Paris." She smiled and squeezed my hand, but something felt different. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. After we returned home, I noticed subtle changes in Laura's behavior. She started going out more often with friends from yoga I'd never met. She bought new clothes and changed her hairstyle. When I complimented her, she seemed almost irritated by my attention. "Just trying something new," she'd say with a shrug. I was working on a major project at the time, often coming home after midnight and leaving before dawn. Our conversations became shorter, more perfunctory. We were like roommates passing in the hallway, exchanging pleasantries before continuing on our separate ways. I told myself it was just a phase, that all marriages had their ups and downs. I promised myself I'd make more time for us once this project was complete. I'd take a week off, maybe surprise her with a trip somewhere tropical. We just needed to reconnect. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday evening in October. I had managed to finish work early for once and was sitting in our living room, catching up on emails while half watching a baseball game. Laura was curled up on the other end of the sofa, scrolling through her phone, seemingly oblivious to my presence. My phone vibrated with a notification from my banking app, "Suite reservation, $1,500, confirmed." I stared at the screen, confused. I hadn't made any reservations, especially not for something that expensive. We were careful with our money, always discussing major purchases before making them. I opened the app and checked the transaction details. There it was, clear as day, the Waldorf Astoria, presidential suite, reserved for Laura Mitchell. The room suddenly felt several degrees colder. I glanced at Laura, who continued scrolling through her phone, a small smile playing on her lips. "Did you book something?" I asked, keeping my voice casual despite the tightness in my chest. She looked up, startled. For a brief moment, panic flashed across her face before she composed herself. "What? No. Why? I just got a notification about a hotel reservation. A pretty expensive one." She blinked rapidly, her fingers tightening around her phone. "That's weird. Must be a mistake or something. It has your name on it." "Well, I didn't book anything," she said, her voice rising slightly. "Maybe someone stole my card information. I should check my account." She stood up abruptly. "I'll call the bank tomorrow. I'm heading to bed, early yoga class in the morning." As she hurried upstairs, I sat motionless, the notification still glowing on my screen. Something wasn't right. Laura was hiding something, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt a deep, gnawing suspicion taking root. I couldn't sleep that night. Laura's breathing beside me was too even, too measured, as if she were pretending to be asleep. I lay awake, replaying our conversation, remembering all the small changes in her behavior over the past few months. Around 3 in the morning, her phone lit up on the nightstand with a text message. She didn't stir. After ensuring she was truly asleep, I carefully reached over and took her phone. The lock screen showed a message preview: "Can't wait to see you this weekend. Everything's arranged." The sender's name wasn't displayed, just a phone number I didn't recognize. I needed to know more. I tried several combinations before remembering Laura's habitual password, our wedding date. June 18, 2011, the phone unlocked. With shaking hands, I opened her messages. The conversation with the unknown number was extensive, going back months. I scrolled up, reading message after message, each one driving the knife deeper into my heart. "Miss you already. Last night was amazing. When can you get away again?" Then I found the messages that confirmed my worst fears. "Just a little longer, babe. After this weekend, I'll tell him I'm leaving. Are you sure everything's going according to plan?" "Yes, he doesn't suspect a thing. After the divorce, I'll get half of everything, and we can be together. He's been saving and investing for years, there's more than he lets on." "What about the house?" "It's considered marital property even though he bought it before we were married. I've been making improvements and contributing to its upkeep. My lawyer says I have a strong claim to at least 40%. There were more messages discussing assets, accounts, and plans for their future together. My future, the one I'd worked so hard to build, being divided and allocated without my knowledge. I felt numb as I carefully placed her phone back on the nightstand. The woman sleeping beside me, the woman I'd loved and trusted for 10 years, had been meticulously planning to leave me destitute while she started a new life with another man. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I lay back and stared at the ceiling, formulating a plan. Laura had underestimated me. She thought I was oblivious, too consumed with work to notice her betrayal. She was wrong. The next morning, I acted normal. I kissed her goodbye, told her I loved her, and headed to work as usual. But instead of going to the office, I drove to see Martin Ruiz, an attorney who had helped negotiate my last employment contract. "Jack," Martin greeted me, concern evident in his expression. "You look terrible. What's going on?" I explained everything: the hotel reservation, the text messages, the plans to blindside me with divorce proceedings and take half of my assets. Martin listened intently, taking notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Well, the good news is, we caught this before she filed. That gives us time to prepare. The bad news is, she's not entirely wrong about her claims. Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, and after 10 years of marriage, she could be entitled to a significant portion of your marital assets. What can I do? I asked. We need to act quickly but carefully. Nothing illegal, nothing that could be construed as hiding assets or financial misconduct. But there are legitimate ways to protect yourself. Over the next few hours, Martin outlined a plan. That weekend, the weekend Laura would be at the Waldorf with her lover, I would implement it. I returned home that evening to find Laura in unusually high spirits. She had made my favorite dinner and opened a bottle of wine. What's the occasion? I asked, forcing a smile. Can't I do something nice for my hard-working husband? She replied, pouring me a glass. Oh, by the way, Jennifer from yoga is having a crisis with her boyfriend. I promised I'd spend the weekend with her at her lake house. Girls' retreat, you know. You don't mind, do you? The lie rolled off her tongue so easily it was almost impressive. Of course not, I said. Actually, I was going to tell you, I have a conference in Chicago this weekend. Last-minute thing, but I can't get out of it. Oh. She couldn't hide her delight. That works out perfectly then. Doesn't it? I agreed, raising my glass to hers. The next day, I told Laura I was leaving for the airport. She kissed me goodbye with more enthusiasm than she'd shown in months. I drove around the block, parked at a nearby cafe, and watched as she wheeled a large suitcase to her car just 30 minutes later. Once she was gone, I returned home and got to work. First, I went to our bank and explained that I needed to protect my accounts due to suspected fraud. Since the house was purchased with my inheritance and owned outright before our marriage, a fact Laura had conveniently misrepresented to her lover, I was able to provide documentation proving it was separate property. I opened new accounts at a different bank and transferred my personal funds, inheritance, premarital savings, and recent bonuses that had been kept separate. Next, I contacted all our credit card companies. I removed Laura as an authorized user from cards in my name and requested detailed statements for the joint cards. What I found was shocking: thousands of dollars in charges for clothing, spa treatments, and hotel rooms over the past 6 months. She had been living a double life on my dime. I also discovered something Laura had kept hidden from me: personal credit cards with balances totaling over $45,000. She had applied for these cards in her name only, using our home address. The statements had been going to a P.O. box I knew nothing about. Martin had advised me to document everything, which I did meticulously. I made copies of all financial records, text messages, and evidence of her infidelity and deception. By Saturday night, I had restructured our finances, consulted with a forensic accountant to trace the money Laura had been spending, and prepared divorce papers citing adultery and financial misconduct. There was one final piece to my plan. Using the phone number from Laura's messages, I compiled all the evidence of her secret debts, spending habits, and financial liabilities. I created a detailed spreadsheet showing exactly how much she owed and to whom. Then, from an anonymous email address, I sent it all to her lover with a simple message. Before you ride off into the sunset with Laura, you should know what comes with the package. This is what she's been hiding from both of us. On Sunday evening, I was sitting in the living room when Laura returned. She looked relaxed and happy as she wheeled her suitcase through the door. Her smile faltered when she saw the expression on my face. Jack. I thought you were in Chicago until tomorrow. Conference ended early, I said, standing up. How was the lake house with Jennifer? Oh, it was nice. Relaxing. She fidgeted with her wedding ring, a tell I now recognized as a sign she was lying. Interesting. I walked to the hallway and returned with her packed suitcases, different ones from what she had taken with her. Because I think you might need these more. What are you talking about? What's going on? I handed her an envelope. Divorce papers. I've already moved your things to the guest room. You can stay there until you find a new place. The color drained from her face. Jack, wait. I don't understand. We can talk about this. Like you were planning to talk to me after this weekend? I interrupted. Or were you just going to serve me papers and watch as I lost everything I've worked for? What are you? I know everything, Laura. The affair, the hotel, the plans to take half of everything. I saw your text messages. She staggered back as if I'd struck her. You went through my phone. How dare you? How dare I? I laughed bitterly. You've been sleeping with another man, spending my money on him, and plotting to rob me blind in a divorce, and you're upset about your privacy. It's not what you think. Stop lying. I raised my voice for the first time. It's exactly what I think. You've been planning this for months. Well, surprise, I beat you to it. I explained everything I had done to protect myself financially. As I spoke, I could see the calculations running behind her eyes, her plans crumbling in real time. You can't do this, she whispered. I already have. Oh, and one more thing. I took out my phone. I sent your boyfriend all the information about your secret credit cards and spending habits. He now knows exactly how much debt you're bringing to your new relationship. Her face crumpled as she lunged for her phone. With trembling fingers, she called him, then texted, then called again. He's not answering, she said, tears streaming down her face. What did you do? I just told him the truth, something you should have tried. She collapsed onto the sofa, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered. He's blocked me, she whispered, staring at her phone in disbelief. How inconvenient for you. Jack, please. We can work this out. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or buying the wrong brand of coffee. What you did was a calculated betrayal of everything we built together. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, suddenly looking very small. That's not my problem anymore. I headed for the stairs, then paused. You know what the saddest part is, Laura? I would have given you anything. If you'd been unhappy, if you'd wanted out, I would have made sure you were taken care of. All you had to do was be honest. As I climbed the stairs to what was now my bedroom alone, I heard her sobbing on the sofa below. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a hollow emptiness where 10 years of love and trust had once resided. In the weeks that followed, our divorce proceeded quickly. Laura, without her lover's support and faced with her mounting debts, agreed to my terms without much fight. She received a small settlement, enough to get started somewhere new, but nowhere near the windfall she had anticipated. I sold the house, unable to live with the memories it contained, and moved to Seattle for a fresh start and a new position with a competing firm. Sometimes I wonder what became of Laura, if she found what she was looking for, or if she regrets the choices she made. As for me, I'm learning to trust again, slowly. I'm more cautious now, more guarded with my heart and my assets. But I refuse to let Laura's betrayal define the rest of my life. They say living well is the best revenge. I don't know about that. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply reclaiming your own story, refusing to be the victim in someone else's plot and becoming the author of your own future instead. I never saw Laura again after the divorce was finalized. I heard through mutual friends that she had moved back to her hometown, working at her parents' hardware store and living in their basement. Her dreams of luxury and ease had evaporated, replaced by the hard reality of consequences. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I think about how differently things might have turned out if she had just been honest with me. If she had simply said she wasn't happy, that she wanted to move on. We could have ended things with dignity, with respect for the decade we shared. But she chose deception, and in doing so, she lost everything, including the man she betrayed me for. Last I heard, he had moved on to someone new, someone without Laura's financial baggage and duplicitous nature. As for me, I'm not bitter anymore. The anger has faded, replaced by a certain wisdom that only comes from having your life upended and finding the strength to rebuild it. I'm dating again, cautiously. I've found success in my new position, made new friends, created a new home. Sometimes I wonder if Laura ever thinks about what she threw away, not just the financial security, but the trust and love of someone who would have done anything for her. I hope the lesson wasn't lost on her, that somewhere in the wreckage of her plans, she found some truth worth keeping. People ask if I regret what I did, how I handled things. I don't. Not really. In the face of betrayal, I chose self-preservation over vengeance, protection over destruction. I didn't set out to ruin Laura's life, I simply refused to let her ruin mine. And in that refusal, I found something unexpected: freedom. Freedom from deception, from false promises, from a life built on appearances rather than truth. They say when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Laura showed me who she was, and I believed her. But more importantly, in responding to her betrayal, I discovered who I really am. And that, perhaps, is the most valuable thing I gained from losing everything else.